Hello, I'm Rob, and welcome to the Uncut Network. Every month we rotate between directors, actors, and super specific genres. We cover everything from exploitation to things your parents will absolutely approve of, relative unknowns to household names, and everything in between. The Uncut Network is the movie podcast with all of the niches, and they cover all of those things and more. I am joined by Caitlyn. Hello there.
Hello.
Mike.
Hello.
And Faye.
Hello.
And I am contending with disapproving looks already in this episode. When I've said I've not watched something that we'll talk about in a little bit, but I'm sorry. So how are you all doing anyway, nonetheless?
Yeah,
I'm doing really well.
Yeah. Good, thank you.
Thriving.
Yeah. So this week's episode is a bit of a change because this is a movie podcast fundamentally, and the actor we're going to be talking about is Reese Shearsmith. So yeah, he's not got the best filmography, and hazard to say, if that's a controversial topic, I don't know.
Or more just like not a good filmography to talk about specifically Reece Shearsmith. He's often just like a little role in something.
Yeah, he is.
Faye has just been open-mouthed this entire time.
Not his entire filmography.
I'm sorry, are we writing off The Cottage?
Exactly.
Which is a great movie.
Yes, we are.
and The Field in England and
Exactly.
India.
Oh yeah, well, The Field in England. We've done In the Earth. That was the last time actually same four people met, which is a weird bit of serendipity.
He's also in 2 out of the 3 Cornetto trilogy, and even though they have small
true.
parts, it doesn't matter. It still counts.
Well, yeah, he's in the bit in Shaun of the Dead where they cross paths, the sort of the theoretical better cast movie. What's the other one he's in?
He's in World's End.
World's End.
One of the people who haven't been turned to mulch or turned.
Oh yeah, that's right. Because you think he hasn't yet.
Well, it's Reece Shearsmith. He always acts like that, so you think obviously he's a robot, but no, that's the gag. No, he always plays the weird one, doesn't he? That's his shtick. I've really started this episode heavily.
That's the appeal, though, I think.
I just don't know what you're saying about.
Yeah, I can't never remember the name of the actor as well. It's like this next pub's going to be absolutely normal. They walk in and they've got like a comedy actor. Oh, he's in a lot of things with Kevin. Oh, what's he called? Kevin Eldon, sort of with him.
The tall guy.
Yeah, tall guy, and he's just famous for playing really, really weird characters. It's just like a little bit of casting, a gag cast like that. So I'm digging myself out of that hole, I think. Slowly.
It's not bad. Are we also writing off High Rise? Because I'm sorry.
No.
High Rise is a fantastic movie.
I forgot.
Loads of people did. That was hated, that one. Absolutely hated, but I loved that one. It was great.
Every single one of them wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Agree.
Yeah. I don't usually make big statements like that, but High Rise, totally. Yeah.
There we are.
I'm sorry. I feel like I've already got a judge of the answer I'm getting here, but feelings on Reece Shearsmith before we jump into what we're talking about today?
Oh, let's restrain this face, shall we? Let's be restrained, okay? I think at this point I can call myself a half lifelong fan. So since I was 18, I've been into League of Gentlemen and such. So yeah, for a very, very, very long time. I'm 42 now, 43 this year, so very long time.
It was like late 90s, wasn't it?
It was 1999. 11th of January 1999, the first episode of the League of Gentlemen. I only say that because I learnt that today. I'm not weird or anything like that. I just saw it today, that was all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else?
I was about to say, Faye's got no notes. It's just all off the top of her head. All constantly rattling. I did make a comment to Faye yesterday that me and her are probably like the PJ and Duncan of fixating on Reece Shearsmith. So, like, I'm really sorry if you've got, like, American listeners who you've now got to kind of explain PJ and Duncan to. But
I refuse to acknowledge PJ and Duncan.
The internet's your friend.
Yeah.
Do you not want to get ready to rumble, Rob? Is that right?
Oh no, it's the legacy of PJ and Duncan. It's like the worst thing in the world. It's just so bad.
I can't see my eyes.
Yeah, Well, okay, I've got to explain that to other people who aren't in this generation. It was a program called Biker Grove, which was set in a part of Newcastle. Got a bright biker, and they played two characters called PJ and Duncan, and one of them got a paintball to the eyes, and he famously, "Oh my god, I can't see my eyes," and it was bad. It was bad.
Wasn't I mean, I know this is off topic for a Reese Shearsmith episode. But wasn't
We've gone off the rails.
also doing his girlfriend, trying to woo his girlfriend whilst he got blinded, so he had like double guilt. That A, let him get blind, and B, he was trying to steal his girlfriend.
I had a Biker Grove Die Hard.
I'm not. I just remember this stuff.
You double check that genres list again. You to find out something.
Biker Grove.
But yeah, I mean, similarly, quite a long-term fan, and sort of anything he's in, I will watch.
Yeah, which is quite a lot these days. He's very prolific.
I can't remember when I got introduced to him, but he's whenever I see him come up with something I'm not expecting, I'm always like delighted to see him. And it's just
it's being a Northerner as well. We don't have many sort of actors done good, and the entire League of Gentlemen, they're all Northern. And he's from Hull, Pemberton's from Manchester, where Rochdale, I think, and Matt Gattis is from around Darlington. So Darlington boy is probably my, just for local bias, I've got to say he's my favourite. Even though he did bloody, Sherlock Holmes, which I hate so much, that programme. I'm sorry.
Whoa. At the end of this, Faye and Rob are going to fight. They're just going to have a fight.
The last appearance of Faye on...
I'm sorry.
They all met at Bretton Hall, I believe. That's how they all came together.
Yeah.
With Jeremy.
A friend of my dad went to the same school or like the university that they went to.
And the fourth one, I always forget the name of, but
Jeremy Dyson.
One of my favourite horror movies of the past period. Let's just say Ghost Stories. He wrote that.
Fantastic.
Which is another movie which is hugely misunderstood.
Absolutely.
It came out at the wrong time. It was poorly marketed. If it was up against something really big, and I think if it had come out on its own, it would have been far more popular than it is, which is a shame.
Yeah. Well, it's one to be rediscovered, maybe.
Sorry about that.
As I poorly alluded to earlier, he's got more TV stuff than movie stuff, so it's going to be a bit of a change of direction on this week's episode. So, the first part, which is one which completely missed me by because I was too busy being an edgy 20-something to actually watch this, is Psychoville. So, seeing as though Faye gave me sort of the angriest expression of my not having seen it, what is Psychoville?
Psychoville is it's a 6-part series over 2 series where you find out these people are getting bribed, and it's how they come together and how it all weaves its way to its finale. I don't know. I don't really know how to describe it. It's a step up from League for me. I love League. Do not get me wrong. But it's a lot more character driven, this, and you get to sink your teeth into like some real weirdos and some really good storylines. So for me, it's just that little bit above League. Caitlyn?
It's quite controversial. I think what's interesting about Psychoville is when it starts, it feels very much like it has that sketch format in which you're introduced to each of the characters. You get to know the one big joke then. And you kind of think, oh, that's what we're going to kind of keep coming back to, is this character in this position. But actually what you get instead is this really quite intricately woven mystery that also works as a sort of sketch comedy. It's a strange thing because some of those characters are definitely sketch comedy characters, but the way they give them that extra life and that extra way of moving around and finding that space, I think it's really incredible. It's some of their best work.
As far as characters, they usually have one character that stands out. In the case of Reese Shearsmith, for League of Gentlemen, it was Papa Lazarou, who terrified the living shit out of me with that Christmas special, I'll just say. And with this, it's Mr. Jelly. Have I got that right?
Yes.
Clown, which is like it's an
Mr.
awful clown.
Not Mr. Jolly, Mr. Jelly.
Not Mr. Jolly.
with an adaptable hand. I don't know. I think isn't it like? I think I've said in one of the early episodes. He's like he's showing off his stump to the kids, as in his stumped arm.
Red raw stump.
Red raw stump. Yeah, that's the lovely thing. Is in the second series, he just seems to start saying that at the end of everything he says. Like anytime he references his hand, he just goes, "Yes, red raw stump." You know, like he's just done with it by the second series. It's yeah.
I guess the other notebook is obviously he also plays Maureen, so he's like so he has a sort of double act with. Is it more? Yeah, with is it David?
David, Maureen, and David Sourbucks.
Yeah, David. So David, who is obsessed with serial killers, the Canonical Five, and all the rest, and his mother encourages him.
An undertone of incest there as well.
More than an undertone.
Well,
Yeah.
You know, Maureen is my favourite character. Hilarious.
He's got some young me was very weirdly attracted to him as a woman. Am I okay to say that?
We relate.
Of the like 3 leagues ones, I think he adapts to being a woman the best. I think.
Oh yeah, it's like Key and Peele. Key is he just vanishes into it completely. It's exactly the same sort of thing.
Yeah. I think what's really lovely about what Reese Shearsmith does is he's always seemingly thinking about all these little things and these little quirks. And I think all of the League performers do it. But you kind of notice it a lot with him because I think he's such a big personality normally that you really notice those things that he's doing quite differently. So like I say, little movements that he does as Maureen. It doesn't feel like Reece. It feels like Maureen, which is really quite incredible. Because, I know that with that, there's a lot more makeup involved than perhaps something with the League. There's sort of a more prosthetic type of feel because they've got a little bit more cash, I think, on Psychoville. Not a huge amount, but a little bit more.
Oh, yeah, I mean, wasn't it famous the local shop for local people, the noses were held up by a bit of tape? So it's...
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, when they started, yes, yeah.
Yeah, they've come, the Tubbs couple, just for namesake. But yeah, they've come quite well then. I'm a bit confused about what Psychoville is then, because it seems to be, it's effectively, it sounds like League of Gentlemen, but extra. Or like a League of Gentlemen, but like a different town, sort of similar town, but somewhere else.
It's essentially a murder mystery.
I would say,
set all over the UK. They all come from different parts and end up coming together at the end to, so you find out what the reveal is. And second series just goes places I never expected.
You'd show like the last episode of Psychoville compared to the first. It's like, how did we get here?
I think I said almost like the British Twin Peaks, maybe.
I don't think you could go that far because I think it is sort of, it does always primarily feel like a comedy.
Yeah.
Like it always feels like that's where you're getting to, is the gag rather than something like Twin Peaks, which is more about the mystery. But I definitely think they took influence from something like that in terms of having a longer form series that is just deliberately weird and sort of not explained. There's a lot of things, for example, like Dawn French's character, who is carrying a toy baby around consistently. And it feels like, aside from a few side glances, everyone just kind of ignores it. It's sort of these very strange characters embedded into a normal world. And I think League of Gentlemen always felt like they didn't interact with the real world that much. It was always within Royston Vasey until you get later. But I think if you think about the sort of first, all the way through League Series 3, I think you get a pretty good measure for what Psychoville wants to do.
Definitely, yeah.
Well, that's I haven't seen the new editions because they're kind of really weird like that. I don't want to finish something that I love because then that's it. I've got no more. And so I've always got it to look forward to.
But there'll always be something.
Well, there'll always sort of hints that they never truly finished with it because, it's such an important part of their lives. But season 3 was very, very dark for League of Gentlemen. got rid of the laugh track. It was just quite cruel, if I describe it as anything, really.
I think that's why it's my favourite, because of how serious it takes itself. Obviously, you've still got all your gags in there and your ridiculous characters. But you were saying Papa Lazarou being your favourite from League. It's Jeff Tips for me. The journey that Jeff Tips goes on is just brilliant.
He's my favourite too. I absolutely love
Jeff. Fantastic. But yeah, that's why it's my favourite, because it is so dark and you're not being spoon-fed this laughter track. And there's nothing wrong with a laughter track. But
it was a sign of the times, really, though, wasn't it?
Yeah. I just think they land so well on their own anyway. It's not something that you need.
Yeah.
It's surreal.
And I do think Psychoville was a bit ahead of its time, actually. I think if it like came out now, I think people would be much more receptive to this sort of like long form, weird, offbeat mystery comedy, really dark, twisted, strange characters. And like, for example, like in the first series, they do an episode which is essentially a homage to Alfred Hitchcock's Rope, where it's sort of done in like 2 takes, basically, or it's meant to be like one.
As a trio, they are very literate in what they're referencing.
Yeah.
Like famously, the Papa Lazarou voice is just somebody who had a weird voice that they found very, very funny. So it's
Steve's landlord.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to look at Psychoville as a kind of bridge between the League and Inside Number 9, because I think what you have in like the League is still sketch comedy that in the 3rd season they start bringing it into more of a dramatic, longer form thing. You know, those characters are no longer existing just in their own frames. They're starting to interact with one another. Then Psychoville, you get that pretty much straight away, that these characters are interacting with the real world and then also with each other, and they're all interconnected. And but you're allowed that time and space to get into those characters and really understand them. And then Inside Number 9, they almost go, okay, great, we've done that. What can we get this over with characters that we only know for the length of a 20-minute episode? And I think a lot of what they are able to do with Inside Number 9 is because of what they did with Psychoville.
Fair, yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
I think so.
Okay, I got to really sum it up this way because we've got to move through a lot of TV this week. But favourite episode of Psychoville? Do we have any? Is it possible to have one?
I think the Rope episode, name check, that is a fantastic one. Because as well, I think that sums up when Reese Shearsmith and Steve Pemberton decide to do something that is maybe considered a gimmick, that they actually make the most of it. It's not just like, oh, we're going to do this because we can. I think it's mainly in there because it saved money to do a bottle episode. But then they were like, but how do we make this as difficult as possible for ourselves? We'll do it in 2 takes.
And it's important for the characters, because you focus on just the 2 of the ensemble characters as well, so it gives them a chance to really explore them in depth as well.
And I love the little surprise to have Mark Gatiss back in that episode.
That is lovely.
Who apparently buggered it up, which is why it's in 2 shots rather than 1.
Really?
Yeah.
Because it's when the chest opens, isn't it? That they have to zoom into that and then come out, and
yeah. I don't know when it happens. Sort of a transitionary period, wasn't it? Reese Shearsmith and Pemberton do a lot of acting still, but Gatiss feels more of a writer these days than anything else.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, have you read his books? He's a very intelligent man, obviously, and his Lucifer Fox novels are fantastic. So I can see why he's moving to writing, for sure.
Yeah, it's just a shame when he's beloved for his other stuff. So he can't have everything, I suppose. But yes, Faye and Mike, favourite Psychoville.
Mine is, I don't know the name of the episode, I do apologise, but it's where we find out that Maureen has got cancer, purely because it's a devastating episode because she'll love Maureen, but I don't really want to say too much, Rob, if you've not seen it, but there's a dinner party and Maureen gets very, very drunk and decides she's going to dress up, and the reveal of what she dresses up as, literally, I remember to this day watching it, I jumped back about 5 foot on the sofa. I didn't know whether I was laughing or crying or what. I didn't know what was going on. It's an incredible episode. Very controversial now, but yeah.
It speaks volumes of his ability as an actor, though, really, doesn't it? To make you laugh and cry. Well, effectively like that, anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Psychoville especially shows that off, how he can do that on a sixpence. He can shift so quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I can't. I think
that was whiplash, that episode.
Yeah, it really was.
But Mike, yourself.
Yeah, I love the Rook one as well. I think I also love. I come to the episode where Mr. Jelly and Mr. Jolly meet. So basically, they're these warring clouds. Well, I say warring clouds basically because one gets booked over the other because people get mixed up, and they have a fight in a ball pit. Which is when I like. Okay, I love this show.
Their interactions are all so good. I love when Jelly turns up at a Punch and Judy show. And they're like arguing back and forth because Jolly's got a restraining order against him. And then the next thing you see the puppet come up holding a camcorder for evidence. And there's just like a beat of Reese Shearsmith going, oh, and covering his face for a second before he goes back on the attack. And it's so perfect. These people are just idiots. And it's wonderful.
Yeah.
Just quickly as well, the bit where he's in the bath and he's just lost his hand. And he's got the doctors going over in his head telling him it's going to be okay. There are options he can have and stuff like that. It turns out the doctor's actually sat on the toilet next to him in the bath. He's like, could you just give me a minute? It's so stupid.
I think as well, a big shout out for the Halloween episode, which is so much fun. And within that, they actually basically recreate a scene, like a segment from, I think it's the Vault of Horror, with Denham Elliott and his wife who's like obsessed with tidying. And they kind of take that. No, it's not his wife who's obsessed with tidying. He's obsessed with a tidy house. That's the way. But they kind of recreate that with Dawn French and Steve Pemberton as these two characters. And it's got such a wonderful punchline. And it feeds back into all those Amicus callbacks that they love so much.
You cannot escape the fate, Whitehead! Then I shall become it! I shall consume all the ill fortune which you are set to unleash! I shall chew up all the selfish scheming and ill intentions that men like you force upon men like me, and bury it in the stomach of this plate.
So we'll move on to the one movie of the night, and I think I'm going to put Mike on the spot and ask him to what is a field in England about.
Oh, Faye had a great description I won't steal before we were recording. I guess it's a guy. It's a Civil War film that's set in a field with magic, a bad tent, and magic mushrooms.
A bad tent, I love it.
Bad tent.
It's as good as you're going to get because it's not really a story-led movie, is it? To be honest,
I mean there is a story, and I guess it's a bunch of I guess it's a bunch of sort of outcasts to a degree trying to find a pub and then get caught up in a treasure hunt, sort of. That's technically the story, I guess, but it doesn't reflect what the film is.
Not even remotely. Caitlyn, what's your feelings on A Field in England?
Well, it'll not surprise you at all that this being a Ben Wheatley and Reese Shearsmith joint, that I am very invested in it. And I have thought considerably about it. I think it's a really interesting thing to see Reese when he's not dealing with material he's written, because I think in so much else he's had like that writing and directing over it. So I think it's really interesting when you could just get to see him as a character that somebody else has created and what he brings to that.
Yes, because he's basically the avatar character for the viewers, the person who we experience this sort of drug nightmare through, essentially.
Yeah,
I think would be the fairest way to describe this movie. Faye, Field in England.
It's a trippy one. He loves a trippy film, don't they? And it does. I think in terms of like performances from Reese Shearsmith, I think this does have one of the strongest, especially just from that one scene. We know which scene I'm talking about. It's terrifying, and I can't tell you why it's terrifying, but it scares the crap. I don't know why, but it does. Yeah, he's fantastic in this. They're all fantastic in it. It took me a few watches to get into the swing of things with it, but Yeah, great.
It was a weird movie, really. I mean, beyond sort of what's in it, the way it was released.
Yeah.
Back when it was put out, people forget this, but I think it was put out in very select cinemas, whilst also simultaneously being broadcast. Was it on Film 4?
Yes, yeah.
And on DVD as all.
I think it was Picture House, cinemas, DVD, Blu-ray, Film 4 screening in the evening. So it was a sort of a multi-release strategy, really.
Yeah, never really seen anything like that since, at least with the TV angle to last.
Yeah,
which is how I saw it on TV, and honestly, I think it's the worst place to see it, really, because it feels like such a, especially in the third act, because it has that sort of weird surreal edge that In the Earth does, where it kind of becomes just a scattergun thing, and seeing that on a TV just doesn't feel right, honestly.
Yeah. I didn't see A Field in England on the big screen until May last year, when they did the sort of reunion Q&A screening. And it is an incredibly different film, that big and that loud, as compared to... I think what was interesting about the release strategy, though, was it was back when Twitter was really good. So you had like a lot of people who maybe went out to see the film or watched their DVD during the day and then still tuned in to watch on the Film 4 viewing when everyone else was sort of watching and tweeting. So you really had that like instant feedback on it, and maybe a lot of people on their second watch as well.
Yeah.
I think the thing is, it's so, I don't want to say experimental. It's not that it's experimental, but it's removed from what you'd expect as not a normal film. I'm not putting this right at all. It feels experimental, and I think you can either go one way with it, especially if you're introducing it and not saying much about it. And coming from Ben Wheatley, who's known for like what he's known for, you know. So I guess that feedback, it could be good, it could be bad, it could, you know. It could not work in favour.
It came at a peak of his powers, really, for Ben Wheatley. He'd been on a killer run, and 2013, I don't know what that'd be off the back of, sort of
Sightseers.
Yeah, Sightseers.
Yeah, so he was like comedy, sort of dark comedy. That was sort of his vein. It veers heavily into horror a lot of the time, but it's kind of traditional in the stuff that he does. And then he did this, which is like European art house sort of sensibility to it.
I was like, even the language, because it's always sort of V and Vow and stuff, and again, that which could be off-putting, but you do sort of tune into it. There is comedy in that sort of Shakespearean comedy in the sense of like it's not necessarily that funny, but you can understand why it's funny.
Yeah, it's that kind of almost slapstick in places at times as well, like, but brutally slapstick. Mm-hmm. So you're sort of watching these hits, and it's like, well, it's not funny, but it's kind of pitched as a gag. I think as well it shares with Wheatley films. I know he's not the subject. I will make him the subject wherever I go. Don't worry about that. In that it's kind of a shaggy dog story as well, in that it doesn't really go anywhere. Like you end up at the same place you started, which is, you know, quite a classic Wheatley thing, I think.
This time, I don't know whether I've got this reading right, but you could debate that it's almost like a companion piece to The Matrix of all things, because The Matrix is about taking the red or the blue pill, accept what is yours, or, you know, accept the world for what it really is, and that sort of is a through line in this, where Reese Shearsmith's character, he seems to be kind of an indentured slave, basically, to this unseen master character. And this is the first time where he's actually being allowed out into the world, and he's sort of experiencing it for the first time. And I think he goes through like this bush, really, and that's sort of him taking, I can't remember The Matrix well enough, either the red or the blue pill, whichever one Neo takes in that movie, I can't remember.
Yeah, well, it's true, because the reason he's out there is he's to arrest Michael Smiley's character, and he's very quickly undermined, and Michael Smiley quickly takes control. But yeah, you're right, he does go through a journey of, by the end of the film, I think he says something literally about like, I'm my own person or something like, or not, you know, not under anyone's control. And again, Reece Shearsmith does track that really well. I mean, you know, he says right at the start, I'm a coward, and you see this very sort of, he's like often like at the back of the shot, he's always like lingering behind, he's all very bit like hidden, and then you do see the character sort of growing confidence to a degree.
He's a bit
as power grows,
start, isn't he? It's a bit like,
yeah.
I'd do anything for myself, sort of thing. Yeah.
Because it's a bit of a class thing, I guess, as well, because they're all soldiers and they're more, they're more like sort of practical, and that he's more academic.
He's an academic thrown into like the cruelty of war. Like he's got nothing to defend himself with, really. And the same as the rest of them. I think about Richard Glover's character, who is obviously sort of tamer and quite sensitive at times, apart from the gag when he's dying about the wife and the wife's sister. But even so, you kind of go, yeah, these are like very everyday men who are suddenly thrown into this absolutely horrendous situation, and kind of left to it. And it's sort of strange that they escape that sort of warscape only to be hit with Michael Smiley, who is much worse.
Michael Smiley's great. So
he's so fantastic, honestly. I think they just work really well together, because Michael Smiley does have that sort of quite domineering characteristic, and Reese Shearsmith can play a little bit snivelling quite well, and that bounces off really well.
Yeah, Faye, you want to say?
I was just going to say that with Michael Smiley, it's universally known that as soon as he comes along, bad stuff is going to happen.
Yes.
Always.
He's, I mean this of all the love in the world, but he's like a Ben Mendelsohn rent-a-bastard. He's gonna sort of. I love those characters. Just they're great.
He's such a lovely fella as well. It's so far removed from who he actually is. He's so nice.
Well, it's like we talked about on the last. I always forget his name. Lead character in Kill List.
Neil Maskell.
Neil Maskell. He's lovely exactly the same, but apparently you said he was the same too in that regard.
Mm-hmm. So lovely.
Yeah.
But he plays horrible shits in movies. But it's usually the way, isn't it?
Yeah.
Get it all out on screen.
I was about to say, exactly. It's a healthy way of living.
It's an interesting role for Reese Shearsmith, I think, though.
Yeah.
He likes
it's very typical, but it's just he goes through a lot in this movie, and it's the iconic scene in this is one which just feels really weird now, where he comes out of the tent gurning like an idiot to some sort of ambient electro. It's
petrifying. Like, what happened?
Yeah.
What happened in there?
We had like a whole minute of just him screaming off screen.
Yeah.
You have no idea what's really happening to him at all.
I think that's so much more powerful though than actually seeing Michael Smiley feed him the runes, because that's of course what's going on is like the runes are getting in there somehow, that he then goes and throws up. And that whole sequence from the screaming in the tent, the way he emerges from the tent, clearly changed and clearly like significantly traumatized. And then into the sort of the lightning rod moment where they're all running around and you get the speed of the thing and the madness really setting in for all of them. I think that's sort of the first time that you really see, because they've borne witness to this terrible thing, it's taken them with him. I think it's such a perfect scene. And honestly, Reese Shearsmith is so good throughout this film because he will be in that like fisheye lens, throwing mushrooms down his face without a single care of how he's appearing or anything like that. I think it's a really brave kind of performance to be that up close, that unpleasant. In so much of it, I think it's great.
He's an easy actor to sort of pigeonhole, but at the same time, when you look at his body of work, you kind of question how he became that sort of. He's kind of typecast as sort of the snivelling do-gooder. I think who else is like it? I can't think of any examples. I shouldn't have said that. He's pigeonholed very easily, but when you look at his roles, he's willing to do literally anything. Scene. And I can imagine that scene where he's coming out of the tent, that had a lot of outtakes, because looking at some of the outtakes that Reese Shearsmith's responsible for, he is a horrible troll with people.
I think as well for Field in England, his being a theatre actor as well really helps, because you have all those like cutaways to the sort of very still moments where they're just all frozen in time, but not really frozen. I think stuff like that, he just gets what's being achieved with Ben Wheatley, then he just doesn't question it. He's like, oh yeah, we'll do that.
Yeah, I was gonna mention those tableaus as well, because it comes to the point you made earlier, Caitlin, about like the way he moves. He's a very mannered actor that you don't really see that much anymore. Like he really does he's very attentive to how a character behaves. I was lucky to be able to see him on stage in The Unfriend, the Stephen Moffat comedy he was in, and that really shows that was like a full farce, and you can really see like he can do that physical thing 5 times a week. Well, he will throw himself into those things and pay attention to that physicality. I think he's always someone I always sort of like feel does slip into his roles as well. Literally, I had a discussion with somebody about this, but like we felt the opposite way of like they felt Steve Pemberton slips into the role, but they always see Reese Shearsmith. Whereas for me, it's the other way around.
Pemberton seems to play a lot angrier characters as well, I think.
I think as time's gone on, Pemberton has took on Pembo is taken on much more darker characters, especially in Inside Number 9. He's
for sure.
Done some horrible things in Inside Number 9. Last weekend, oh Jesus Christ, yeah.
We'll get to that later. So just to wrap up on I Feel in England, I mean, before jumping to you, I just might not love this movie, but I respect the hell out of it, because there's so many filmmakers in the sort of independent space who just go out into the woods and make a movie, and 9 times out of 10, it's just a bog standard slasher, really. And you see this production, it's effectively, it's done with very little money. The most money they'll put into it is a few explosions, which is cheap enough, but costumes. But they're like shoot for the stars, really, in far as what they're doing and what they're telling and the stories they're going with and the angles they're taking at it. And sort of the faith that is put into Reese Shearsmith as well to basically anchor this movie, which doesn't really amount to a hill of beans, really. So it's an interesting movie, an interesting thing, I think. But Mike, final thoughts on anything that you haven't said on I Failed in England?
I mean, yeah, it's hard not to compare it to In the Earth as well, because like Ben Wheatley going into the woods making a film twice, and also like both films having bad things happen with Reese Shearsmith in a tent. I think I'm sort of I think I don't love this film, but it is very unique, and it's like and one that I would probably be happy to watch over just to sort of try and get a handle on it, which is probably you never can really. But it's and I think it's interesting to see Reese Shearsmith in this sort of leading role, because I think he's often like within an ensemble, like so it was nice to see him. He doesn't get many opportunities to be a leading man that much, which is a bit of a shame. I think he definitely can do it, because he definitely obviously can pull it off as this evidence.
I don't think Ben Wheatley's the sort of director where he's like in any of his stuff which requires interpretation, where he's of the mind where this is what it means, this is absolutely what it means, and I won't take no diversions. I don't think he really cares, honestly, in the best way possible. But yeah,
definitely,
yeah. But Caitlin and Faye, anything else on The Field in England?
I'll leave Caitlin to this one.
No, I was going to cut myself off, because otherwise we will be here all night. I'll save it for an essay.
Fair then.
I've not really got much else to add, to be honest. I'd like to say that the more you watch it, the more you understand it, but there are still elements of it I probably don't understand. But it's weird to say, I really enjoy watching it, and I get that feeling that I want to watch it every now and again. You know, when you just get a little, when you need a snack, when you need something sweet after tea, you're like, I could do a little snack. I could do a little Field in England. Yeah. But no, it's a great film. Again, I like that they took a risk, and that scene is terrifying and will be burned into my brain for the rest of my life.
It's weird to think that the guy who did that also made the Meg 2. It's just something that I can't understand.
Really?
About the Meg 2. No, I'm not going to.
Well, look, what's that essay?
Oh, she's here.
I imagine it bought him a very nice house. But
yeah, I bet it did.
For the next 3 films.
Oh, yeah.
My like worst take is that I do think it feels like a Ben Wheatley film. But
you got to dig for it, I suppose, but maybe it's there. Maybe.
It's funny, I watched The Fog before I did this interview. I hadn't seen it in a long, long time. And I forgot that she jumps into bed with him very quickly. And I it's pretty chaste. It's hardly, gratuitous on any level. I mean, Tommy's wearing a tank top. Yes, I'm assuming on some level it was nice to be playing this kind of rebellious rich girl who's hitchhiking her way around with a strange man in a strange town during a strange circumstance. Yeah, I think it felt good. The wardrobe was much more to my liking, that it jived much more with me. Not that I was jumping into bed with people, but you know what I'm saying. It certainly felt a little more contemporary, and it was good. I liked it.
And that brings us to the part of the show where we pick what's going to be coming up on an upcoming episode. And this one will be bouncing around to the actors cycle. And we talk about somebody who sort of floats between genres. She stayed relevant for a hell of a long time. That is Jamie Lee Curtis.
Oh, cool. Who is currently going through a hell of a renaissance, really, isn't she?
Indeed she is, yeah. It's funny, we're in the run-up now to this year's Oscar season. Famously, of course, last year, she won the Oscar for Supporting Actress, and in her speech made a whole fantastic thanking the horror fans who'd been supporting her overall for as long as they have been.
Yes, I realise what I've done now. I've basically set it up so the podcast can do everything everywhere all at once, and I hated that movie. It's going to bite me on the backside. I'm going to have to explain myself, aren't I?
You are no, it's Everything Everywhere All at Once is not for everybody. I can completely understand why somebody would find it annoying.
Yeah. But as far as sort of, she's had so many eras to her career, like breaking through in slashes of the 70s, being in the sort of the bawdy comedies of the 80s, sort of, she's to now where she's sort of a acting elder statesman who's in sort of a lot of great stuff. She was in the first Knives Out as well. She was great in that too. Mm-hmm. So is there anything from you three that sort of stands out? Just first reaction, things that we can talk about?
Well, I mean, if you wanted to, you could do a lovely sort of bookending. Start with Halloween, end with Everything Everywhere All at Once. In between, then it gets really tricky, because as you say, you've got comedies like Trading Places. I would probably go for A Fish Called Wanda.
That's good. That's a good call.
Doesn't get talked about enough, that one,
Yeah, and then you've also got the more action side with Blue Steel. And probably certainly the first time I would have seen her in a cinema was True Lies. Which is really cool.
Very good in,
she has this varied career, and it would be quite tricky, I think, to pick them. But yeah, if I was going to go for 4, then it would be Halloween, A Fish Called Wanda, True Lies, Everything Everywhere All at Once. If I had to drop one of them, it would probably be True Lies. Much as I enjoy it, I think for her, there's probably more to say about her in A Fish Called Wanda.
Yeah,
any other shouts? Sorry.
True Lies is an Arnie film which Jamie Lee Curtis happens to have a very good supporting part in.
And it's a James Cameron film. So,
yes.
Yeah, it's very him.
Yeah, I'd like to throw in another recommendation for Blue Steel, which is part of that fun era Catherine Bigelow thing. I know Zero Dark 30 is very divisive. I know some people love it, but I don't think I've ever heard anyone describe it as a fun time at the pictures. But yeah, Blue Steel is a very interesting one to talk about in terms of her action roles, particularly as it comes from an era of a genre, really, a whole genre which does not have many leading female parts. You cannot think of many cop movies that centre on women, and most of the ones that you can are directed by Catherine Bigelow.
Yeah, the absolute one essential movie that you have to do, and I think there's no real potential or wiggle room, it's Halloween. That's dead set as much as it is possible. But Mark, any other picks for yourself?
No, I'm going to be really boringly obvious and echo everybody else's sentiments, really. I think Halloween, obviously, Fish Called Wanda, definitely, because it's the last time John Cleese was ever funny.
Yeah.
Steady on.
And
He's turned into an old man shouting at clouds now, though,
exactly.
Yeah, now, but A Fish Called Wanda was 1987, 88. He did other funny stuff after that. He's wonderful as Ape in George of the Jungle.
Oh, God. I'll tell you what.
That's a deep cut.
That's a deep cut, yeah.
I wish producer Bob was on this because he used to recommend George of the Jungle to us on Eclectica literally every week. What a tragedy that he wasn't around to hear Vincent there.
But yeah, she's had a wonderful career. She's really getting, and I don't use this phrase so much, but she's really getting her roses now. She's really getting the respect and the accolades she's deserved for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or if you want to talk about her in less prominent role, Knives Out.
Yeah.
I think Knives Out is a fantastic example of late period Curtis. Maybe she's not in it quite enough. Maybe we could do that with one of the other 9 million people who were in that movie.
Hey, well, maybe there should be an episode of the Uncut Network on ensembles.
Yeah,
Maybe.
well, yeah, that'd be a good shout for the gentleman. No, we'll find a room for that one. We'll find room.
Yeah.
But that brings us to the last movie. And before I do it, the German acid western I was talking about was Deadlock from 1970 by Roland Click.
Oh wow, I'll have to watch that.
Yes.
Did it click with you?
Well, not being a western fan, not especially. It's a bit weird. It's one of those ones that they're shot in sort of quarry. Lots of movies shot in quarries.
Oh, look out for that.
Oh yeah, it's good.
Episode.
We're Doctor Who fans. Yeah, we're used to things being shot in quarries.
We're down with that completely, yeah. If there's a quark thrown in there as well, I'm having a fun time.
Oh, I play guitar, Miss Hepworth. I'm not a vampire, if that's what you're thinking.
No, I wasn't. Katie. My name's Katie. Hello.
Can you tie a bow tie, Katie?
No, I don't know how to, sorry.
It'll have to be you then, Tabs. Has Tabitha gone through the phone numbers?
Not really. She was just talking about Adrian, was it?
Andras. Well, he's not going anywhere. He can wait. Mobile telephones in this street are useless. It's a dead zone.
Yes, my signal went.
I think it's due to foliage or some such. And since rounding the corner, your phone will have been in a state of outage.
That brings us to Inside number 9. And in specific, there's 3 episodes that we're going to be talking about. Let's see where we are. It was Wise Owl. You mentioned it earlier, didn't you? The last weekend. And Diddle Diddle Dumpling. Diddle Diddle Dumpling.
My favourite episode.
They just fist punching.
I did.
Okay, so we'll go with the earliest first. Diddle Diddle Dumpling. Bess, you said it was one of your favourites, so
it's incredible. Everything about it, the story is heartbreaking and, really worrying about the places you can go to mentally when you're trying to deal with trauma and grief. The symmetry in that set just blows my mind. It's so much attention to detail. Like how it even looks out of place that they've got 3 settings instead of 4. It just looks weird and it makes you feel weird, like they're not a complete family. Are we allowed to give spoilers in this? Is that right?
I guess you can't really talk around them.
Yeah, it's quite hard to, yeah.
So it's essentially this guy, family man, finds a shoe and he goes on a desperate search to find the owner of the shoe and bring it back together with the other, because in his mind, he needs to get it sorted out. They need to be back together. And he starts becoming obsessed with it, putting up flyers, going on radios, talk shows to try and find the person, driving his wife, Keely Hawes, insane, quite rightly. And we find out later on that the reason he's got this need to bring them together is because one of the twins that he fathered has passed away, and it all leads to him doing something bad to Matthew Bing. Is it Bainton? Am I saying that right? Bainton? Yeah, anyway.
It's the one-man show as well, isn't it, essentially? It's just 90% of it is just Reese Shearsmith.
It's
slowly
insane.
losing his mind.
Mm.
Oh, grief.
And like I say, if you look at anything in the background with regard to the set, everything is mirrored. It's always double either side. So on the sideboard, you've got the picture frames that are exactly the same, candlesticks that are exactly the same. And when you've got them in a 3, like at the dinner table, you've got the seats in a 3, it just looks off. It just doesn't feel right. And I love that they do that with the set design. It's amazing.
I've not watched all of Inside Number 9 because, I'm really slow at TV. But it's this one of the bleaker ones, maybe, is it?
I would say so, yeah.
I'd say so.
Mm.
I think all the ones we're talking about are the bleaker ones.
There's another episode that effectively it's the similar sort of story about sort of child death, but it's taken from a completely different angle. It's almost from the perspective of the other sibling. Wise Owl, I mean.
Oh, yeah,
sorry, yes. Sorry, yes.
We're getting very perplexed there.
It's been a long day.
There's been so many, I was trying to think, which one was...
Yeah.
Caitlyn and Mike, your feelings on that's a really bad thing to say. This episode that we're talking about. Feelings on that one.
I remember not loving it that much on the first watch. I think probably because when it gets to the twist, I was like, oh, that's come out of nowhere. But what's been nice about watching, especially rewatching these 3 episodes, is when you go in knowing, it does actually really enhance your experience. I got a lot more out of it this time around. And yeah, I mean, Reese Shearsmith does go through a whole journey of real ups and downs, because there's points when he seems like, it seems like, he's found the guy's come and collected his shoes, so he can still now be a family man, but there's still something off, and then it all comes back around again. So yeah, again, it's a great showcase for him, definitely.
I really like the framing of this in terms of you get the seasons throughout. And I think it's another really good episode of episode to illustrate how Shearsmith and Pemberton in their writing will really play with the format of the show from the beginning to the very end. So you really can't even afford to look away during the credits because there's something else going to be there, because they are so keen to really fulfill all of that time with what they've got going on. And I think it's interesting sort of talking about Inside Number 9 as having twists, because in a lot of cases they don't. It's just how they're telling the story. Like Mike said, when you go back, you realise, I just wasn't looking at the important thing. Mm-hmm. It was there. I just wasn't looking at it. And I think that's far more clever than some twists that feel out of left field and are all new information. And I don't think they ever really do that.
I think a good example of that is during Diddle Diddle Dumpling, when he's found the owner, everything's fine, he's gone on his way, and his daughter starts singing the song, and it focuses in on Keely Hawes, and you see on her face that she knows he's going to spiral again, just a little bit. And unless you don't know at that point what the ending is, so it doesn't. It could be throwaway completely. It could just be her watching. But it's not. She's definitely concerned at that point.
Yeah, so picking up the mood a bit for the second episode and totally, happy one. Wise Owl.
This is my favourite Inside Number 9 now. I think this is the best one.
Wow, that's a bold thing. That was your favourite book.
I know.
What is Wise Owl?
What is Wise Owl? It's about a lonely young man. Well, I say young. I don't know. I know he's not. But young man, Ronnie.
Well, Reese Shearsmith can play sort of age agnostic, can he? He can play anything.
Well, I think he's meant to be because he says that his sister was meant to was going to be 50, so he's older presumably. So anyway, the guy whose father voiced an animated character called Wise Owl, who delivered these safety videos, and these you get these cutaways to these animated shorts, basically of public information films sort of things that don't climb on pylons and things like that. And if for a long time you don't really know what's sort of going on with him, he just seems a bit sort of isolated and lonely. And then his dad comes back, and we learn about tragedy with his sister dying in a fire, and where him and his dad were I guess we just flat out spoiled it, or his dad was abusing him basically upstairs, and his dad effectively made his son take the blame. He's been haunted by that sort of confusing mix of guilt ever since. And yeah, I think the reason I love it is because I think it handles a really, obviously very sensitive subject matter, I think, really powerfully, I think, while also having this sort of retro 70s style animated cutaways that are sort of darkly parodic, but also don't undermine the tone at all. I think it's a real impressive achievement. Reese was very good. Again, this is him in a very introverted sort of character, but you read a lot from him, despite the fact he's sort of not. Despite the fact he's hiding so much.
As you meet him, he's about to commit suicide. Put a radio in the bath with him, and also it's not scared to be funny either. This episode, Steve Pemberton's appearance is very, very funny. Yes. As a mood breaker with his rabbit that needs taxidermying, and the taxidermied rabbit he gets for his time, you know.
I mean, he's already screwed because he changes his mind, but I don't want it taxidermied anymore, having given the rabbit over, so I think...
Yeah, but fair Caitlyn, your feelings on Wise Owl?
It's so heartbreaking. I had a big old cry at this one, not surprisingly. And just the ending, the resolve for him, it's still a gut punch despite him coming out not really coming out on top, but coming out better than he would have done. It really does, and I love it.
Yeah.
I love this episode, but I love miserable.
It certainly is, isn't it? We got gut punch for another one. Caitlyn?
I mean, again, I think it's testament to Shearsmith's range as a performer and a writer, because honestly, I mean, Faye referenced Jeff Tips earlier. This is the same man, and you couldn't have two performances more separated, more absolutely at odds with one another, because there's a kind of, and also like a gentleness towards the material as well, which in a lot of cases you might not have had previously. I think it's a really mature piece of work. And again, it's that attention to detail in terms of getting the PSAs involved as well. I think it's really, it feels different and it feels cohesive as well.
It's really quite shrewd the way the Wise Owl sort of cutaways work. How it starts off as legitimately these public information videos, and it slowly becomes more and more like a real character and a real person. And the sequence where a man with just full frontal nudity with a owl head turns up. Odd, mistake of words there. But it's very shrewd. Sort of the feeling of that aspect.
Yeah, because it's almost like it's just almost full on horror really for like the first half of it, really, in this sort of strange man that you don't really think about.
It's a horror episode, honestly, I feel.
I was going to say the cleverness of even like one of the early PSAs is about don't talk to strangers because you don't know what they're going to do, but obviously the danger isn't from the stranger. It's from, he says you can always trust your mummy and daddy, and we learn obviously you can't. It's just, again, it's very subtle. It's just because it's just another example, but it all weaves into the story.
And again, just really heartbreaking that you can have these PSAs and they mean absolutely sod all.
Yeah,
it's going to happen anyway.
It's true.
It's so it plays it so raw and so damaged.
Like even like the phone call he has with his mum, where he's almost a bit like childlike, and he's clearly like, I know it's a weird thing, but he sort of wants to connect, but he's just finding it just too hard because it's something that she doesn't know about as well. So it's it's a real sad episode. I love it still. Yeah.
There are moments of this as well that I feel are quite similar in tone, almost to something like Possum.
Yeah,
the Matt Holness film. So
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, not much as not as much of a day ruiner, but it's hardly lifting as it was. All.
But ends sort of optimistically, but as I say, still sad.
Yeah,
have a nightmarish sort of spider puppet. Yeah.
I would say with Wise Owl, it's nice that he didn't take the extreme route out of there that would have just made him get into more trouble and spiraled him even more out of control. It's nice that he essentially is letting go of it, kind of thing, like taking back his power.
Yeah.
Brilliant episode. They're all brilliant episodes. Let's not lie.
And the last one, which again is just Blake after Blake after Blake. And the theme is, for all of them, dead children. So it's
Oh yeah.
a wonderful triple bill of episodes we've got here.
It's what we like.
These are ones we picked as well. We didn't think, oh, maybe put a lighter one in. What would that say about us?
Caitlyn, the last weekend.
I wish I hadn't been left with this one. So it's, I think what's really interesting with this is the fact that in very classic Inside Number 9 style, it introduces you to it and you think it's one particular thing. So there's a long-standing couple and they are coming to the end of their relationship for an as yet undisclosed reason. And it is their last weekend. And as that unfolds, secrets are unveiled and the true motivation for why they are having this last weekend are revealed.
Yeah.
When I first saw this episode, I was convinced that this was much like the Black Mirror episode where, not to compare it to Black Mirror, obviously, there is no comparison in my book, but the Black Mirror episode where it brings Black Museum, where it all comes together. I thought this was going to be an accumulation of every insight. So I was looking out for these things. And I completely missed what happened at the end, and I didn't know the old torture method. I wasn't aware of it, bizarrely enough. So when that happened, I was like, whoa.
I was aware of it, but not in any like depth, not to like try it out or anything. But as it starts coming together, you go, oh wait, I've read about this because there's something wrong with me. And but yeah, I think it's really interesting because it does present itself originally as, and because you know they can do really heartfelt really well, you think, oh God, this is going to be devastating. This is going to be this couple reckoning with the end of their relationship.
It has a feeling of, what was that episode? It was in season 2, I think, with the actor everybody loves in this country. 2 pints of lager and a packet of crisps.
Yeah.
Sort of episode. Where
You
has that feeling.
Kind of prepare yourself for feeling like it's going to be this sort of domestic drama. And it plays with that for quite a considerable amount of that time. And I think there's sort of, the reveal is so twisted and so like it's incredible. It's like if you were trying to put, I don't know, Old Boy into a 20-minute BBC One show, like, which I reckon they could do as well.
Well, they're doing a TV version of Old Boys. Maybe that's what they're going to do.
Get the boys to do it, and that'll be great. Yeah.
Oh my God, I'd watch that. My God.
The thing is, I know we're doing a Shearsmith episode, but Steve Pemberton in this episode is incredible.
Yeah.
Like, he's so fucking dark.
Yeah.
I was astounded.
My personal favourite episode of Inside Number 9 is To Have and To Hold, which is the pop noodle episode.
Oh, yeah.
Like, again, because there's something wrong with me. And that episode, I think, obviously Reese isn't in it very much, so it's a difficult sell, but I think it's one of the best they've ever done. And I think it's nice that they can switch up who takes the darker role and who's doing, like, I think it's really fun the way they can clearly trust each other enough in the writing and the filming and everything like that to just go, okay, you take this one because you'll be stronger in this.
And even just, I don't know if they've played like a couple, the two of them, before, really.
Yeah.
Like, I know as well. And it's one they just play it with sort of, seeming sincerity until the end. But they just, it's not like they're not, and that's clearly just they're comfortable with each other to be able to just play this sort of just pretty much straight, as for want of a better word.
Because it's not, they don't make a joke about them being a couple. Like, there's no sort of fourth wall break that says, like, hi shippers, we're doing this now. There's nothing in that because we know it exists. We know it's there. But, like, they don't do that because they are building this very sincere, this very heartfelt relationship that they're then going to rip apart.
As dramatically as you possibly could. We've we talked around it, but essentially, Reese Shearsmith ends up in a mud bath, which also has quick drying cement, and he introduces the element where insects and effectively going to eat him very, very slowly from the head down. So yeah, it's rage of which is pretty extreme. Justified though, justified. Like Old Boy, it's kind of justified. You don't. He's really, really evil, but you kind of don't see him as the bad guy either. It's very morally grey.
He is the bad guy for what he's done and how he's ended up in that situation. But I think what's worse than being eaten alive by insects is the fact that as he's dying, he's going to know that man did not love him for the entire time they were together, and that's cruel. That is really cruel.
It's very, very cruel.
I love it. It's so twisted.
So just inside number 9 in general, I guess. Any other... let's talk about Reese Shearsmith and inside number 9 first, before jumping into sort of other episodes that you might want to highlight. But yeah.
Oof. How long have you got?
Reese inside. Where do you want to start?
Yeah.
I think the episode, and I can't recall the name at the moment, I'm so sorry. It's Cold Comfort. That's the one. Which is also Reece and Steve directing for the first time as well, I think. So that's really interesting because you've got this sort of multi-camera setup for the security cameras. This is the one set in a suicide call center. So it's a lot of like almost screen life in some bits because you're just looking at someone on the computer. You're looking at security footage and everything like that. And I think it's a really interesting, an interesting one because, we know them as writers and performers, but that sort of step into direction, I think, marks it as really important.
And again, a little bit theatrical as well, which again, they've got experience of in that sense of there's things happening at the same time. And
yeah, absolutely.
I think ignoring the actual story itself, because it is incredible, it doesn't need to be spoken about. But I do think Reese's performance in Bernie Clifton's dressing room is one of the best things I've ever seen. It doesn't feel like him. It feels like somebody else. And it's, this hurt character who's, resolving the death of his best friend. It's fantastic.
Yeah. It's such a good vehicle for him as well.
Yeah,
it could be seen as just very, very self-indulgent. How these two actors just basically writing a load of projects for themselves, and it kind of is. It is very self-indulgent, but at the same time, it'd be very easy to just knock it out, and not put a great deal of care or affection into it. But every episode,
the fact they vary up about what roles they take, and sometimes they are not in the episode as much in general, and sometimes one takes still the lead part or the other. So I think they provide enough variety for their own parts, which is probably what they would want as well.
Yeah.
What would your thoughts be on the Psychoville episode in Inside Number 9?
Enjoyable for Psychoville fans, but I think probably baffling for everyone else.
Well, my husband would agree with you. Me and my husband nearly got divorced last night over this in the pub. We didn't. I'm kidding, but we did have a bit of a shouting match over.
Faye's made a scene.
I made a scene. Well, because he said it could be seen as lazy to do an episode like that, and I obviously went completely against that and said no, it's not. I think it's a nice thing to bring back to your fans who didn't get a resolve from Psychoville, because they did want to do a third series, but then ended up doing Inside Number 9 because the BBC, I assume, didn't commission it. And it's a nice way to just resolve a part of it that people didn't get to see. I see it as a nice thing.
I think it was nice that it was a surprise as well. That no one knew that was coming. Like, it wasn't trailed as in, next week, come revisit these characters from 10 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's sort of just like, you're watching this episode, and that episode looks really good. It's also the same thing with like Deadline, the Halloween thing.
I was just about to say, my favourite Reece Shearsmith, if I was to pick another favourite Reece Shearsmith performance, is him as himself in Deathline. He's being able to be his angry self, tweeting angrily.
I love how much they both committed to that as well, especially on Twitter. I think it was Steve.
tweet.
Steve didn't go on Twitter for months afterwards, making out he'd been taken by this.
Yeah. Again, it's a number 9 showcases how savvy they are of a number of times they sort of jumped fake episodes, and they did trailers for a whole episode that never got aired again. So,
all the publicity photos with Robin Asquith
on the bus. Especially because they've been asked all the time, you can do one on the bus. I was like, we're finally doing one on the bus. And then the joke is that it's just a fake quiz show with Lee Mackos. So savvy of and same with the Secrets Stealth Psychoville sequel. It's disappointing for those of us who were tuning in, Jenna Coleman's in one, that'd be fun. Oh, she's in it for 2 minutes.
But I think the kind of fake episode that they're filming in Deadline is also really good.
Yeah.
And there's a bit of you that goes, okay, I love that you're doing a Ghost Watch, guys. I really love it.
Well, I won't.
But also, can I have that episode as well, because it looks great.
I know. Sorry, Faye.
Sorry, I was just going to say in Deadline, I think when they're in the dressing room and we're seeing them being filmed, I'm sure it cuts to Reese and he's been asked about BBC Three, and he's like, they're taking it off the air, and that's his long running feud with BBC Three that I think he's got. I think there was an issue way back in the day where BBC Three didn't pick up League. I might be wrong. It's something funny. Like that.
I can imagine it's some sort of in joke. Yeah. And then they've moved before to because they're sort of wrapping up inside number 9 with the series is coming out next month, I think, isn't it, with the 9th series? But they've talked about doing it on stage, or a stage version. I think they said they haven't decided if they would do old episodes or if they do a whole new one. But I think
many are effectively just stage productions.
Yeah.
Definitely, that's definitely true.
Very, very easy to adapt.
You could do it like a Ghost Stories, where you have a story interweaving it all and just have your individual stories.
Yeah, I'm not sure they do something where they took an existing episode and put it on stage. I think they'd be the way they are and the way that they conduct themselves. I would imagine it would be new stuff. But yeah.
So you kind of touched upon something that I was going to bring up. Favorite Reece performance in Inside number 9. You can't just say himself in the Deadline episode. That doesn't count.
So it's such a big topic now. Do you know what I mean? There's so many.
There's so many. Yeah.
Why don't you have to get a list up and look through more?
A few maybe that really stood out for you. I mean, the ones that we talked about up there, clearly, but other examples too.
Literally just looking through the list and trying.
Yeah, I'm having to revisit because there's so many.
Yeah.
Oh, Tom and Jerry.
Oh yeah.
I think he's great in that. The Heroine, he's not in for very long, but he's clearly having a lovely time doing his old hammer bit.
His talented fingers. I play guitar.
Well, that's one of the scariest 30-minute episodes that BBC's probably done in decades.
The Devil of Christmas.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Am I wrong in saying that the Heroine, the house it's filmed in, is the same house that's used for Mr. Lomax?
I can believe it.
Might be, yeah.
There's a crossover somewhere. Yeah, Devil at Christmas.
Yeah,
incredible again.
I like him in The Magician one as well. I think he does misdirection. Yeah, he's the he's the magician. He's the sort of smart. Is it? Yeah, he's like I guess a bit like a smarmy.
Yeah,
persona, which is quite fun.
He's a magician stealing bitch, Doris. That's a TikTok thing. I'm sorry.
I was like,
sorry.
I like the
throwing curveballs.
I like the Ken Loach style one they do as well. The one where
with the Advent, not the Advent calendar, the calendar.
Love's Greatest Adventure.
Yeah,
Love's Great Adventure. Yeah.
Love's Great Adventure. Thank you.
Again, because it's seen something very different from them, because it's very sort of grounded and real, which they don't usually like. It's usually it's a mix of tones, but they can really commit to this particular tone. It works. It's really effective.
It was very close to home for me, that one, because my brother has a lot of troubles, and it were a bit too real, that one. Yeah,
I think what's really great about them as well is that they can shift between, like I say, you've got your gothic horror, the Heroine, and a domestic drama, kitchen sink type realism thing. And a lot of the time you wouldn't get that range. You know, you wouldn't get and particularly you wouldn't have perhaps the confidence in a partnership because, you know, you go into the BBC, which is public money, you know, buy a license fee. There's a certain amount of like, they've got away with a lot of stuff that is perhaps not to everyone's taste. So I think it demonstrates that they've definitely got some trust in them. I was just trying to think as well about the episode in the school.
Mr. King?
Mr. King.
Yeah, Mr. King. That's the one. That is great. And I mean, I think what's lovely as well is when you've followed them for so long, you can really pick up on all those in-jokes that they've done for years and all the things they love just turn up all the time. It's like, I think from the start, it's eating an onion as if it were an apple. Turns up in every single thing they've done.
It's true.
And like it's based on Fred West. Like
of course it is.
That's the worst thing. They've got a running joke that is based on Fred West because apparently Fred West used to eat onions like they were an apple, which is the clearest sign that he was a psychopath possible. But I think that's the lovely thing, that you'll get these jokes woven in. You know, I kind of would love to see them move into like a feature length horror. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Definitely. And it's actually they can draw on so much references as well.
Yeah.
Like it's not just horror and stuff. It's, you know,
very literate.
Yeah, very literate, and able to draw on all sorts of things, which is great.
I do pride myself on when I watched Mr. King getting where this was going in like the first few minutes, because I saw the Harvest Festival posters. I'm like, I know what's happening here. I get in a folk horror episode. Yeah,
I smell a folk horror.
I do wonder what you were saying, Caitlin, about how much they get away with, because there's 2 episodes in particular where I, maybe sickeningly in my mind, I do apologise, thought it was going somewhere else and it went. So in To Have and to Hold, when Steve goes down to the basement and opens the door and a child's hand reaches from below, I'm like, they can't do this, surely. This cannot be what I think it is. And it turned out it wasn't, thankfully. And I just wonder if there have been times where they've presented the BBC with something and they've outright gone, that's too far. And kind of a bit with Diddle Diddle Dumpling, when he gets the blood on his hands at the end, I thought maybe he's killed the other child.
That was my first thought when I watched.
I think as well, it's kind of having a bit of trust in them that they will play with this and that the way they will deliver it won't be especially graphic. So as you say, it's like a hint toward it, or like you're left in some ways to make your own sort of determinations about it. And I think that probably helps them as well.
I probably know they've got that reputation since League of, you know, Hurlip and Papa Lazarou, and like they know that they've got that sort of reputation in their sort of back catalogues. So again, like you said, they can play with that of like, oh, how far are they going to go this time?
They're never explicit though. They've never been explicit.
No.
But what they suggest is always much worse than what they could potentially show on screen.
Yeah,
I don't know. It comes from their sort of love of 60s and 70s sort of Euro and British horror. It really comes through in the stuff that they do.
Yeah.
In Mr. King, I was surprised to see Polaroids of cocks on the BBC. Truly, I was like, hang on.
It's true.
Well, I think they've earned. I mean, that's such a weird thing to say. They've earned Polaroids of cocks. But they kind of have. They've done so much.
They've earned the right to show penis.
I've viewed that's the going rate at the BBC. 20 years, you can have a drawer full of cocks.
Yeah. On that, I don't think we can really say about repeat the question I opened the show with. So just a hypothetical here. It's not going to happen. He's going to have a long career beyond what he's done now. He's great at everything he does whatever he wants really in the British industry. But if his career were to end today, what do you think his legacy would be? What do you think Reese's legacy would be if he's
everything?
Just stopped?
Absolutely everything he does. It's all brilliant. And I know that makes me sound like a super fan. I get all that, but the man is a chameleon, and I don't think you can put him down to one thing.
No,
I think when you think of his performances, it's always bits of different performances.
I think that fluidity is probably the thing you think of most, because I and it's weird because we haven't talked about it because it's not his show. He appears in it, but he's not in it a lot. But Catterick by Vic and Bob.
Yes.
The stuff they get him doing in there.
Very funny.
It's hysterical. He gets to do the lip sync to Satan Rejected My Soul. He gets to do that absolute night of madness in the hotel room. I will quote all
with a pin in his head. So yeah.
I will quote, "No, I don't know what women are like" all the time because it's just really, really funny, and I think it's using him to his best sort of twitchy kind of performance then. But I think he is capable of pulling it back and then doing sort of some very in-depth monologue for a field in England, which is peppered with old English language. You don't get that with a lot of people, and particularly not people who are regarded primarily as comic actors, which I think he probably is. And I don't think it's true.
Can we have an honourable mention for the outtake from Car Share? Because
yes,
it's never out of my head ever.
Yeah. He's a menace.
It's not out of a lot of people's heads if you talk to them. Lyrical
so
dance
great.
flap.
It's so good because he clearly knows what he's doing, and everyone else knows what he's doing, but they can't. They're stuck in that car with him, and they've got to get it through to the end. It's marvelous.
There's only two things that make me laugh till I cry, and it's that outtake and Mark Commode talking about Sex and the City too.
Oh yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, Reese Shearsmith is a naughty little boy, and he knows exactly what he's doing. he really does.
Settle down, Faye.
He's just. I think he's just a very precise performer. He's just like I say, he's just great to watch because you know he's going to be sort of giving his all. He's got impeccable timing. He can just in terms of dramatic and comedic, and he's just like I say, you just have to sort of look at the breadth of his work. Really, you can't be pinned down to he's best known for this specific role because it's more he was great in that and this.
Yeah.
Even a bit in Spaced when he's the Robot Wars guy.
Oh my god!
So good.
Again, I hadn't thought of that. Is a massively quotable
I haven't thought of that.
Because it's just perfect. Because it's as well that was in the script, just written as, "Oh yeah, I hadn't thought of that," and then he did that. I mean,
wow.
It's perfect. It's so perfect for that character, for that thing. And that's a 1 episode deal. That's not him coming in and living that character. That's just turning up and being like, I think he'd do this.
Wasn't he the Doctor Who about William Hartnell and Adventure in Space and Time? He turns up at the end as Patrick Troughton, and actually that casting makes a lot of sense because he is quite comparable to Patrick Troughton in that sense of he can sort of slip into anything. It's always very particular, always engaging to watch. He's always giving a lot, even if he's just doing stuff in the background. I actually remember a bit in the Dumpling when the camera sort of swings around, he'd gone into the bin to get the shoe. It's a big physical comedy thing that's just in the back of the shot, him chasing through this bin.
Also very talented with his voice because a scoot beef, anybody got a bottle of orange juice. It's just
perfect.
Forever. A scoot beef, you can just say that.
Oh my god.
But one thing I think he's won't get enough credit for. He's a working class lad done good. Because you look at the generation that followed in British acting, and it's all posh boys and posh girls, really. And in the case of Inside Number 9, they're giving opportunities to actors from all sorts of backgrounds, and that's something which I think they just don't genuinely get enough credit for.
Yeah,
let's not forget as well. They introduced. He was doing stuff before Psychoville. He was doing that Mitchell and Webb look and such. But Daniel Kaluuya was in Psychoville.
And what's wonderful about rewatching Psychoville is you look at Daniel Kaluuya and you just go, yeah, he's a star instantly. Everything is there with him from the first moment you see him. It's marvellous. What an actor.
Across all their shows, they attract ridiculous cast. If you look at all the actors they've worked with, it's literally the best British actors, or just best actors ever in the list. It's incredible. So clearly, I mean, that's going to be a testament to their writing and presumably how good they are to work with as well.
That's sort of tangent aside here, but I really dislike Riz Ahmed because he said there's no roles for, like, brown people in England, so he went off to America where there's tons. And then you get people like the League of Gentlemen crew who basically they give opportunities to people, to create opportunities to people.
Mm-hmm.
And there's just two separate ways to sort of conduct yourself as sort of a creative in this country, and those three boys have done marvellous things.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than taking the ball and running away with it, they've just, paid it forward, which I don't think is really talked about enough of a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think particularly when you look at the show and you sort of see, oh, it's written by them, occasionally directed by them, starring them, it would be very easy to sort of be like, oh, this is a vanity project. But it never feels like. It feels like they've had a really safe place in which to experiment with the concepts, with different ways of working. And I think, all credit to them for using that to do something different with. Because it would be so easy to just be like, we're going to make the same thing 10 times. And they never do. I think as well, what's interesting, and I can't remember where I heard it originally, so a citation needed. There was something said about Daniel Kaluuya when he was in Psychoville. There's a scene in the second season where he is threatened by somebody. And it was written in the script that he was supposed to cower. And he'd gone to them and said, I don't think he'd do this. And I think it sends the wrong message if he did. And they took that on and they allowed Daniel Kaluuya to do his acting decision in that moment. And it works so much better. So I think, the idea that they are receptive to their guest stars or their collaborators probably, helps a lot as well.
Definitely.
Because they've played the long game, really, haven't they? They started what League of Gentlemen is a sketch thing at Edinburgh.
Yeah.
And then it became a radio show, and it's just, they've really done great things. And Reese Shearsmith, because that's who we're talking about today. So I think that wraps us up. Is there any sort of thing left? Anything left to say about our race before we wrap up?
No, I think I've come off crazy enough.
I mean, I sort of quite research for this, of like seeing so many YouTube compilations of like Reese Shearsmith is not a serial killer, or Reese Shearsmith is there's no married couple. It's like, there's a lot. It seems like he's resonant with a younger generation, I guess.
Yeah,
I didn't know how loved he was. I mean,
TikTok love him. What do you call it when they do a cut?
The
like
edits, TikTok
edits. An edit, they do
Yeah.
edits all the time. Yeah.
Which is very nice, because you wouldn't sort of think that necessarily of like a sort of random British actor. It's like, oh no, he's again, that's the sheer force of will he exerts over everyone.
It is interesting that you would have a younger generation who pick up on stuff like League and Psychoville, whereas they're not out. I mean, I do see a bit of Boosh out there, but you don't see it on the same level.
I know a lot of them love Bob Mortimer as well.
Well, who doesn't? The man is hilarious.
Yeah, you realise that manic person that he really is.
Yeah.
From Mortimer, mate. From my hometown as well, so I'm taking that as a win.
I'm just thinking about the song. Tonight I wish I'll kill again, having heard the word from God.
I did once turn up at Faye's breakfast table with a little Bob Mortimer song that I'd found, and he's the gift that keeps on giving. If you're talking national treasures, Bob Mortimer is up there.
Absolutely.
Also, just a compilation of him falling over when he's fishing with Paul Whitehouse. Amazing.
I'll put that song at the end of the episode because it just needs to live. It's a dangerous little song. But yes, I think that wraps it for this week. Caitlyn, where can we find you and the work that you do online?
I am, for my sins, still on Twitter at ScaredSheepless, and I am also on Instagram at ScaredSheeplessBlog, and kind of semi-regularly publishing still at ScaredSheepless.com, and you can find anything I'm going to do will turn up there at some point.
Mike?
You can find me at Autistic Horror on Curse Twitter and Instagram and various other things, and as Mike Leach on Letterboxd as well.
Yes, and Faye.
I don't know if this is like an age thing or a stubbornness thing, but I'm also still on Twitter because apparently I love a toxic environment. At Tweak821. You would normally find me on Spit Grades, also on Twitter, but we're under a rebrand at the moment, so yeah, that name might change.
Yes, so next week, our next episode, we're doing Jamie Lee Curtis, which is a fun one because we still haven't agreed what movies to do because, you know,
if you don't include Freaky Friday, that is a travesty.
Yeah.
You need Freaky Friday.
Yeah. Unanimous.
I mean, I've just become aware of the campus movie in all campness, which is perfect. It's just too camp. I can't handle it. But yeah, that is next week. But you can keep up with the podcast across all social medias. And please, if you're a porn bot, stop following me on Twitter. I've got enough of you. But
I'd like to echo that as well, please. Thank you.
Twitter and Instagram. You can find me there at Uncut Robcast. And until next time, thanks for listening.
Slender people get through gaps, and slender men look sweet in fucking slacks. Slender ladies can kick you in your head, and slender people take up less room in bed. Raspberry jam is nice, but it's full of fucking pips. Lemon curd is lovely, but puts inches on your hips. Nutella spreads quite easily, but it looks like turkey tongue. Tomorrow I shall kill again, having had the word from God. Yeah.